Ambassador Jack Mitchell stood at the entrance of the Crystal Palace, his hand gripping his daughter's small fingers a little too tightly. The massive obsidian structure towered above them, its walls gleaming like polished midnight under 3 alien suns. He glanced down at 6-year-old Lily, who stared wide-eyed at everything around her. "Dad, are those real dragons?" she whispered, pointing at the 2 enormous creatures flanking the entrance. Their scales shimmered between gold and bronze, and steam curled from their nostrils with each breath. "Yes, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about? We have to be very respectful here," Jack said, straightening his diplomatic uniform one more time. He hadn't wanted to bring Lily to the most important negotiations of his career, but when his wife Kate got deployed on an emergency medical mission to the Outer Rim, he'd had no choice. His nanny had quit the week before, and the Dragon Empire had given him exactly 3 days to arrive or cancel the peace talks entirely. The dragons didn't believe in delays or excuses. 20 years of tense relations between humanity and the sovereignty of scales had finally led to this moment, and Jack couldn't mess it up. Even if that meant bringing a first grader to an alien palace. The dragon guards watched them approach with eyes like molten copper. One of them, easily the size of a small building, lowered its massive head to examine Lily. She squeezed her father's hand so hard it hurt. "A human hatchling," the dragon rumbled, its voice like rocks grinding together. "This is most unusual, Ambassador Mitchell." "I apologize for the irregularity," Jack said, keeping his voice steady and respectful. "My daughter will remain in our assigned quarters during all official proceedings. She won't interfere with the negotiations." The dragon's nostrils flared, and Jack felt his heart hammering. He'd spent 6 months studying dragon culture, learning their customs, memorizing their hierarchy. One wrong move could end these talks before they began. After what felt like an eternity, the guard stepped aside. "High Chancellor Brennan has been informed. He will decide if the hatchling may remain." The walk through the palace corridors felt like moving through a fever dream. Everything was too big, too smooth, too perfect. The walls weren't just black, they seemed to absorb light, reflecting back images that weren't quite reflections. Lily stayed pressed against Jack's side, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. A smaller dragon in humanoid form met them in what Jack assumed was a waiting chamber. She introduced herself as Coordinator Jade, assigned to help them settle in. Her human appearance was almost perfect, almost. The golden eyes gave her away, and the way she moved was too precise, too controlled. "Your quarters are in the East Wing," Jade explained, leading them down another impossible hallway. "The High Chancellor will meet with you in 2 hours, Ambassador. There is food prepared according to human dietary requirements." "What about Lily?" Jack asked. "Is there somewhere she can play? Activities for children?" Jade's expression flickered with something that might have been confusion. Dragons do not segregate hatchlings during important clan gatherings. However, human young are different. She may remain in your quarters. There are viewing screens for entertainment. The guest suite was enormous, with ceilings that vanished into shadows and furniture that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal. Lily immediately ran to the massive window overlooking a garden filled with plants that glowed softly in colors that didn't exist on Earth. "Dad, this is so cool," she called out. Jack felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. At least she wasn't terrified anymore. He knelt beside her, brushing her brown hair out of her face. "Listen, kiddo. I'm going to be in a lot of meetings over the next few days. You need to be really good, okay? Stay in these rooms. Don't touch anything important. And if you need me, tell the computer and it'll find me." "I'll be good," Lily promised, already distracted by the glowing garden. "Can I go outside?" "In the garden? I think so, but let me check first." Jack spent the next hour making sure Lily would be safe, setting up communication protocols, and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. His daughter was the only human child probably within 100 light-years. The dragons barely tolerated human adults. What would they think of a kid running around their sacred palace? But the first day passed without incident. Lily watched videos, ate snacks, and drew pictures with the crayons Jack had packed. The second day, during a particularly brutal negotiation session about mining rights, Jack's earpiece chimed with a message from Coordinator Jade. "Your hatchling is in the garden. She appears content. No intervention required." Jack tried to focus on the Dragon Elder explaining territorial boundaries in a language that took 3 times as long to say anything, but part of his mind stayed on Lily. When they finally broke for the evening, he rushed back to find her kneeling by a flower bed, her hands covered in colorful dust. "Lily, what are you doing?" She looked up with a huge smile. Dad, look. These rocks make colors on the walls. Watch. She pressed a purple stone against the smooth black surface of a garden wall, and it left a bright mark behind. Jack's diplomat brain immediately went into alarm mode. Sweetheart, I don't think we should draw on their walls. But it's so pretty. And nobody said I couldn't. She'd already covered a section of wall with stick figures, flowers, stars, and what looked like a very happy dinosaur wearing a crown. Jack started to stop her, then paused. The dragons hadn't said anything about it yet, and technically the garden walls weren't inside the palace proper. Maybe it would be fine. Maybe he was being too paranoid. Lily looked so happy, more relaxed than she'd been since they arrived. Okay, he said slowly. But only on this wall. And if anyone tells you to stop, you stop immediately. Deal? Deal. What Jack didn't see was the dragon servant who'd been tending the crystal plants nearby. The creature had frozen mid-task, its eyes locked on Lily's childish drawings. Its expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. The servant carefully set down its gardening tools and walked quickly toward the palace interior, its pace increasing with every step until it was almost running. Lily kept drawing, humming a song from her favorite cartoon, completely unaware that she'd just done something impossible. High Chancellor Brennan conducted his evening rounds the same way he had for the past 3 centuries. Every night, he walked through the palace grounds in his true form, checking on the ancient wards, examining the sacred spaces, ensuring everything remained as it should be. At 412 years old, he'd seen empires rise and fall, watched species come and go, but the palace never changed. It was eternal, carved from obsidian blessed by the first dragon ancestors. Tonight, something was different. He noticed it immediately when he entered the East Garden. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. His scales prickled with awareness. Something magical had happened here, something significant. He followed the sensation to the garden wall where the human child had been playing earlier. Brennan stopped walking. His massive body went completely still, frozen like the statues that lined the palace entrance. For almost a full minute, he simply stared at the wall, his ancient mind struggling to process what his eyes were showing him. The markings weren't random scribbles. They weren't childish drawings. They were first script. Perfect, flawless first script. The language of the dragon progenitors, lost for 10,000 years. The tongue used by the original dragons to literally shape reality, to bind oaths that couldn't be broken, to seal promises into the fabric of existence itself. Brennan had spent 80 years of his youth studying fragments of this language from crumbling texts, and he could barely read a dozen symbols. Most dragons thought first script was just mythology, stories told to hatchlings about the old days. But here it was. Written by a human child who'd been playing with colored rocks. Brennan's claws scraped against the stone as he leaned closer. His translator implant was useless. First script didn't translate because it wasn't really a language in the normal sense. It was pure meaning crystallized into form. But he could make out enough to understand what had been written. Daddy is the best in the whole universe. I wish I had chocolate ice cream right now. This is Princess Lily's secret castle and dragons are invited for tea parties. The High Chancellor felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, complete and utter shock. The child had written cosmic binding runes to declare her father the best. She'd created an invocation of desire magic to wish for frozen dairy products. And that flower she'd drawn in the corner, the one that looked like a daisy with too many petals, that was a growth manifestation sigil. Brennan looked down and noticed for the first time that actual crystal flowers had sprouted from the cracks in the stone pathway, their petals chiming softly in the evening breeze. The child had accidentally made flowers grow with her artwork. Brennan's mind raced through possibilities. Was this a trick? Some kind of human weapon disguised as a child? Had they somehow taught her first script to infiltrate dragon society? But that made no sense. First script couldn't be taught. It required understanding reality at a fundamental level that took dragons centuries to achieve. And the content of the writing was so innocent, so genuinely childlike. He activated his communication crystal. Council of Elders. Emergency convocation. East Garden. Immediately. Within minutes, 11 dragons appeared, most in their humanoid forms. Elder Grace arrived first, her silver hair pulled back in the severe style she'd worn for 200 years. Brennan, what could possibly warrant an emergency session at this hour? The human negotiations are at a delicate stage. She stopped talking when she saw the wall. Elder Thomas materialized next, his ancient face creasing with confusion. Is this some kind of joke? Who wrote this? The human child, Brennan said quietly. The ambassador's daughter. She was playing in the garden this afternoon. Impossible, Grace whispered, moving closer. Her fingers traced the air near the symbols, not quite touching them. This is perfect first script. Better than anything in the archives. This child symbol here, see how the loops connect? That's the elder form, the version we thought was purely theoretical. More dragons arrived, and each had the same reaction. Shock, denial, then slowly dawning realization. Elder Marcus, who'd spent his entire life studying ancient texts, actually sat down hard on the garden bench, his face pale. I don't understand, he said. I've dedicated 3 centuries to studying the fragments we have. The child is what, 6 human years? 7? 6, Brennan confirmed. According to her file. Elder Victoria, the youngest of the council at merely 150 years old, was examining the flower drawing. This growth sigil, look at the crystalline formations. She didn't just write it, she activated it. Do you know how much power and control that requires? I tried for 40 years to successfully cast a growth invocation and managed it exactly twice. What are you suggesting? Grace asked, though her tone said she already knew. I'm suggesting, Victoria said carefully, that this human child can instinctively do what we spend lifetimes learning. That somehow, human neurology processes reality in a way that naturally aligns with first script. The garden fell silent except for the wind chimes and the soft humming of the crystal flowers that shouldn't exist. Elder Thomas stood up slowly, his expression grave. We need to test this. We need to know if this is unique to this one child or if all humans possess this ability. Because if they do. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone understood the implications. First script could open the sealed vaults where ancient dragon technology slept. It could access the forbidden archives. It could break or bind the old treaties written in the founding days of the Empire. If humans could naturally read and write first script, the entire power structure of the galaxy could shift overnight. Bring the child and her father to the Grand Chamber tomorrow, Brennan ordered. We'll conduct the tests there. And someone find out everything we can about human brain structure, their visual processing, their language acquisition. There has to be an explanation for this. As the elders dispersed, Brennan stayed behind, staring at the wall. At the stick figures and flowers and happy suns that were actually some of the most powerful magical writing in existence. Created by a child who just wanted to draw pretty pictures while her father attended boring meetings. He noticed one more symbol in the corner, partially hidden behind a depiction of what appeared to be a smiling creature with wings. It was the rune of truth-speaking, one of the most sacred symbols in dragon culture. Below it, in that same perfect first script, the child had written, "Dragons are really nice and I hope they like me." The binding magic in those words meant they were objectively true. The child genuinely believed what she'd written, which meant the magic recognized it as truth. She had no deception in her, no ulterior motive. Which somehow made the whole situation even more terrifying. Because if this child could accidentally rewrite reality with crayons and colored rocks, what could humanity do if they learned to harness this power intentionally? Brennan looked up at the 3 moons rising over the palace and wondered if tomorrow's meeting would save the Empire or destroy it. Jack Mitchell didn't sleep well that night. The message from High Chancellor Brennan had been polite but firm. He and Lily were to appear before the Council of Elders at dawn. No explanation given. Just a formal summons that made Jack's stomach twist into knots. He'd been a diplomat long enough to know that emergency council meetings were never good news. Lily sat next to him now in the Grand Chamber, swinging her legs because her feet didn't reach the floor of the massive stone chair. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, a worn pink thing named Mr. Hoppers that she'd had since she was 2. Jack kept his hand on her shoulder, trying to project calm even though his heart was hammering. The Grand Chamber was designed to intimidate. The ceiling disappeared into darkness somewhere far above. 12 enormous thrones carved from single pieces of black crystal formed a semicircle around them, and in each throne sat a dragon in their true form. Not the smaller humanoid shapes they sometimes used, but their real bodies, massive, scaled, with eyes that glowed like molten metal. Lily had started crying the moment they'd walked in. Quiet tears that broke Jack's heart. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "They just want to ask you some questions." "I'm sorry," she whimpered. "I didn't mean to be bad." High Chancellor Brennan leaned forward, and even that small movement made Jack instinctively step in front of his daughter. The dragon was the size of a bus, his platinum scales catching the light from the floating orbs that illuminated the chamber. "Ambassador Mitchell," Brennan's voice echoed through the space. "Your daughter is not in trouble. We simply need to understand something unusual that occurred yesterday. May we speak with her? Jack wanted to say no. Every fatherly instinct screamed at him to grab Lily and run. But they were surrounded by the 12 most powerful beings in the Dragon Empire, in the heart of their territory, light years from human space. Running wasn't an option. You can ask me anything you want, Jack said carefully. But she's 6 years old. She's scared. So please, keep that in mind. A smaller dragon, at least smaller compared to the others, still twice the size of an elephant, shifted in her throne. This was Elder Grace. Jack recognized her from the briefing files. Her scales were silver blue, and her voice was surprisingly gentle when she spoke. Lily, is it? That's a lovely name. It means flower in one of your Earth languages, doesn't it? Lily peeked out from behind Jack's leg, still clutching Mr. Hopper's. She nodded slightly. I saw your drawings in the garden, Grace continued. They were very beautiful. Could you tell me who taught you to draw those symbols? Nobody taught me, Lily said in a small voice. I just drew pictures. Like at home. Did anyone show you what to draw? Give you a book or pictures to copy? Lily shook her head. I just made them up. From my head. The dragons exchanged glances that Jack couldn't interpret. Elder Thomas, an ancient-looking dragon with dark green scales, spoke next. Child, would you be willing to draw something for us now? We'd like to see how you create your pictures. A servant dragon brought out a large slate made of the same black obsidian that covered the palace walls, along with several colored crystal styluses. They placed it on a table that had been brought in specifically for this purpose. Everything else in the room was dragon-sized. Lily looked up at Jack. He squeezed her shoulder and nodded. It's okay. Just draw like you always do. She approached the table slowly, picked up a blue stylus, and bit her lip in concentration. After a moment, she drew a simple circle with rays coming out of it. A sun, the kind every kid draws. Bright and happy with a smiling face in the center. The moment she finished, the entire grand chamber filled with warm, golden light. Not from the floating orbs, but from the drawing itself. The symbol glowed like a miniature star, and Jack felt actual warmth on his face as if he'd stepped into sunshine. Every dragon in the room went completely still. By the ancient fires, someone whispered. Elder Grace cleared her throat. Lily, that was wonderful. Could you draw something else? How about an animal? Your favorite animal? I like cats, Lily said, already starting on a new drawing. She created a simple cat shape, triangle ears, round body, stick legs, and a curled tail. The kind of cat that showed up in every kindergarten art project across human space. The slate began to hum. The cat drawing shimmered, and suddenly Jack could swear he heard purring. A faint outline of golden light formed around the symbol, moving and shifting like a real cat stretching. That's the Guardian Sigil, Elder Victoria said, her voice shaking slightly. One of the most complex protection spells in existence. She just drew a cat. For the next hour, they had Lily draw different things. Each time, the dragons would react with increasing agitation. A house became a sanctuary ward so powerful that one dragon claimed it would take a military strike force to breach it. A heart became an eternal bonding glyph. A tree became a life-growth invocation that made small plants start sprouting between the stone floor tiles. Lily just thought she was playing a fun drawing game. She had no idea that each picture was actually ancient magic that dragons spent decades trying to master. Finally, Elder Grace held up a large piece of paper with a complex geometric pattern on it. Lily, this might be harder, but could you try to copy this? Draw it exactly as you see it. Lily studied the pattern, a series of interlocking circles and triangles. Then she carefully recreated it on her slate. Jack watched the dragons lean forward, tension radiating from every scaled body. When Lily finished, Elder Thomas made a choking sound. That's the convergence formula. From the Forbidden Archives. I've only seen it once, in a vault that requires 3 elders to open. She just copied it perfectly after looking at it for 10 seconds. High Chancellor Brennan stood up slowly, his massive form casting shadows across the entire chamber. Ambassador Mitchell, we need to discuss what this means. But first, I need to ask you a direct question, and I need you to answer truthfully. Did humanity send your daughter here knowing she could do this? Is this some kind of infiltration attempt? Jack felt anger flash through him, cutting through the fear. Are you seriously asking if I'm using my 6-year-old daughter as a spy? She's a child. She draws pictures. I didn't even know whatever she's doing was special until you summoned us here. Dad, are you mad at me? Lily's voice was small and frightened. Jack immediately knelt down, pulling her into a hug. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. I promise. These dragons are just surprised by how good your drawings are. We need to understand how this is possible, Grace said, her tone more diplomatic now. Ambassador, has your daughter had any unusual education? Exposure to ancient texts? Alien artifacts? She goes to Lincoln Elementary School in New Seattle, Jack said flatly. She's in first grade. Her teacher's name is Mrs. Patterson. Her favorite subjects are art and recess. She can barely read English, let alone ancient dragon languages I've never heard of. Yet she can write in first script as if she was born speaking it, Elder Thomas said. As if the language is somehow native to her mind. An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Jack could see the dragons processing this, their ancient minds working through possibilities that probably included some very dark outcomes for him and Lily. Finally, Elder Victoria spoke. There's one way to know if this is unique to your daughter or if it's a species-wide trait. We need to test other humans. And we need to understand the biological basis for this ability. You want to run experiments on my daughter, Jack said coldly. No, Brennan said firmly. But we would like permission to analyze human genetic data, brain scans, neural patterns. Non-invasive tests. And we would like to invite other human children to visit the palace. To see if they can do what Lily does. Jack looked down at his daughter, who was now drawing another picture on her slate, this one showing stick figures of a man and a girl holding hands. He wondered if she was creating some kind of unbreakable father-daughter bond magic without even knowing it. I need guarantees, Jack said. Written, legally binding guarantees that Lily and any other human children will be safe. That this won't be used against humanity. That we're partners in figuring this out, not subjects. Agreed, Brennan said immediately. But Ambassador, you need to understand something. If humans can naturally read and write first script, everything changes. The old vaults, the sealed archives, the ancient treaties, humans would have access to all of it. That's power that could reshape the galaxy. Jack met the dragon's glowing eyes. Or it could be the foundation of a real alliance. One where both our species benefit. The dragons looked at each other, and Jack saw the moment the decision was made. Very well, Brennan said. Let us see where this path leads. The genetic testing took 3 days, and Jack spent every minute of it worrying. Dragon scientists worked alongside the human medical team he'd insisted on bringing in from the nearest human colony. They drew blood samples, ran brain scans, analyzed neural patterns. Lily was a trooper through all of it, especially after one of the younger dragons brought her chocolate ice cream, the same thing she'd written about in her garden drawing. Jack sat in the palace's medical wing, watching through a window as his daughter played with building blocks while sensors monitored her brain activity. Dr. Helen Park, the human neuroscientist who'd arrived on emergency transport, stood beside him reviewing data on her tablet. This is incredible, Helen muttered, scrolling through screens of information. The pattern recognition centers in her brain light up when she sees the dragon symbols, but not in the way you'd expect. It's not like she's reading or translating. It's more like she's seeing music and instinctively knowing how to dance to it. Can you explain that in a way my diplomat brain can understand? Jack asked. Helen turned the tablet toward him, showing what looked like a colorful map of brain activity. When most people learn a new language, specific areas of the brain activate. Broca's area, Wernicke's area, the angular gyrus. But when Lily sees first script, her visual cortex lights up along with areas we associate with spatial reasoning and pattern completion. She's not processing it as language. She's processing it as visual mathematics. And that's unusual. It's revolutionary. It means her brain is hardwired to see these symbols as natural patterns, like recognizing faces or geometric shapes. She doesn't have to learn them because her neural architecture already knows what they mean. A dragon scientist named Elder Kyle entered the observation room. He'd taken a humanoid form to work more easily with the equipment, though his golden eyes gave him away. Dr. Park, we've completed the genetic analysis. High Chancellor Brennan has called a joint meeting. Both of you need to see this. They gathered in a smaller conference room, more human-sized, which Jack appreciated. His back was killing him from 3 days of sitting in furniture designed for beings 3 times his height. The Council of Elders was there, along with several human officials who'd been brought in once word of the discovery spread. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Elder Thomas, the ancient dragon who'd spent centuries studying old texts, stood at the head of the table. His humanoid form was weathered, like a man in his 80s, but his eyes held the weight of ages. What we're about to share contradicts everything both our species believed about our origins. But the evidence is undeniable. He activated a holographic display showing two DNA helixes side by side, one labeled human, the other dragon. At first glance, they looked completely different, as expected. Different species from different worlds shouldn't share genetic material at all. We found something that shouldn't exist, Thomas continued. There are genetic markers present in both species, specifically in the sequences that control neural development and sensory processing. The mathematical probability of these markers occurring naturally through parallel evolution is less than 0.003%. Jack leaned forward. You're saying we're related? That's impossible. Dragons evolved on Draconis Prime. Humans evolved on Earth. Our worlds are 8,000 light-years apart. That's what we thought, Elder Grace said quietly. But there's another explanation. One I never wanted to believe until now. Thomas pulled up another image, an ancient text that looked like it had been carved into stone, then photographed and enhanced. This is from the Vault of Origins, the oldest repository we have. Most dragons think it's mythology, stories told to hatchlings. But listen to what it says. In the time before memory, the makers came from beyond the dark. They who walked between stars carried the first fire to dead worlds and breathed life into stone. From their essence came the first ones, and the first ones flew into the new sky. The makers from beyond the dark, Helen said slowly. You think that refers to another species? One that came from outside this galaxy? The text describes their arrival through what we always translated as the Sky Tunnel, Elder Kyle added. But when you look at the actual first script, it's describing something that sounds remarkably like a wormhole. Artificial. Created. Used for long-distance space travel. The room fell silent as everyone processed this. You're suggesting, Jack said carefully, that some ancient alien species came to both our worlds and somehow seeded life? That dragons and humans share a common ancestor from another galaxy? It sounds insane, Thomas admitted. But look at the evidence. The genetic markers. The fact that human brains are naturally wired to understand first script, a language supposedly created by the dragon progenitors. What if it wasn't created by dragons at all? What if it was taught to them by these makers? And what if humans carry the same biological legacy but never had anyone to teach them how to consciously use it? Elder Grace stood up, her expression troubled. There's more. We found records, fragments, really, in the deepest archives. References to other children of the makers scattered across the galaxy. Species that vanished. Civilizations that rose and fell thousands of years before dragons even learned to make fire. The text suggests the makers were trying to create something. An experiment spread across multiple worlds. But why? Jack asked. What were they trying to accomplish? We don't know. The makers disappeared. Or left. Or died. The texts don't say. All we know is that dragons and humans appear to be the only two surviving species that carry their genetic legacy. Everyone else is gone. Dr. Park was furiously taking notes on her tablet. If this is true, it explains so much. Why Lily can instinctively write first script. Why her brain processes those symbols as natural patterns. She's not learning an alien language, she's accessing something built into human genetics millions of years ago. This changes everything, said General Richard Price, one of the human military advisors who'd been sitting quietly until now. If we share a common origin with dragons, if we can both access this ancient technology and language, the strategic implications are enormous. It also creates opportunity, Jack said, shooting the general a warning look. For cooperation instead of competition. Think about it, two species, separated for millions of years, reunited by accident because my daughter drew pictures on a wall. That's not a threat. That's a miracle. Elder Kyle nodded slowly. The ambassador is right. But there's something else we need to discuss. Lily isn't the only one who can do this. We've been monitoring the reports from your human colony ships. 3 days ago, you brought in that neuroscientist and head team. Some of them brought their children. Jack's stomach dropped. What happened? The children got bored waiting in the Palace Visitor Center, Grace explained. Someone gave them some drawing materials to keep them occupied. Within an hour, they'd covered an entire wall with first script. Growth sigils, protection wards, even a weather-calling rune that caused a small rainstorm in the courtyard. All of them. Every human child we've tested can do this. The room erupted in overlapping conversations. Human officials arguing with each other, dragons debating in their rumbling voices. Jack just sat there, thinking about what this meant. Every human child was potentially a magic user by dragon standards. Every kid with a crayon could accidentally activate ancient technology or write binding oaths into reality. We need protocols, Dr. Park said loudly, cutting through the noise. Education programs. We need to teach human children what they're actually doing when they draw. And we need dragons to help us understand first script before some kid accidentally unseals something dangerous. Agreed, Brennan said, his deep voice bringing order to the chaos. But this must be handled carefully. There are dragons who will see this as a threat. Who will want to eliminate that threat before it grows. Jack met the High Chancellor's eyes. Then we need to move fast. Create a joint program. Dragon teachers and human students. Show everyone that this is about building something together, not competing for power. What Jack didn't mention, what he was carefully not thinking about too loudly, was that in 3 days, Lily had accidentally become the most strategically important 6-year-old in human history. And he had no idea how to keep her safe while the galaxy figured out what that meant. The attack came on the 7th night. Jack woke to alarms blaring through the palace corridors, the kind of sound that made your brain snap instantly awake with pure adrenaline. He rolled out of bed, stumbled to Lily's room, and found her sitting up confused and frightened, still clutching Mr. Hopper's. "Dad, what's happening?" "I don't know, baby. Stay behind me." Jack grabbed his emergency communicator, the one linked directly to palace security. Before he could activate it, their door burst open. It wasn't dragon guards. It was Elder Nathan, one of the council members Jack recognized from the meetings. But something was wrong with his eyes, they burned with an intensity that looked almost like hatred. Behind him stood 4 more dragons in humanoid form, all armed with energy weapons that definitely weren't standard palace security equipment. "Ambassador Mitchell," Nathan said coldly. "You and your daughter are coming with us." "Like hell we are." Jack positioned himself between the dragons and Lily. "What is this?" "This is us fixing a mistake before it destroys everything our ancestors built." Nathan stepped into the room, and the temperature seemed to drop. "Did you really think we'd allow your species to have access to first script? To unsealed vaults containing weapons that could crack planets? Your daughter and every other human child who can write the ancient language are threats that must be eliminated." Jack's mouth went dry. "You're talking about killing children." "I'm talking about protecting the sovereignty. The council is divided. Half of them want to believe in your alliance fantasy. But some of us understand reality. Humans have been expanding across the galaxy for 2 centuries, consuming resources, claiming territory. Now you want access to dragon technology too? We won't allow it." One of the other dragons raised his weapon, pointing it at Jack. "Step aside, Ambassador. We're not here to kill you, but we will if necessary. The children are the priority." Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Jack saw the weapon charging, heard Lily whimper behind him, felt his own inadequacy in the face of creatures who could tear him apart without effort. He was just a human diplomat with no weapons, no backup, no way to protect his daughter from beings who'd lived for centuries. "No." Lily screamed the word, her voice raw with terror. And something impossible happened. The air between them and the dragons solidified. Not quite a wall, more like the space itself became resistant, heavy. The energy blast hit this barrier and dissipated like water against stone. Jack stumbled backward, stunned. He looked down at Lily. She was holding her drawing pad, the one she carried everywhere, pressed against her chest. On the visible page was a picture she'd drawn earlier that day, a big protective bubble around stick figures labeled "Me and Daddy." Just a child's drawing of safety. Except it wasn't just a drawing anymore. Nathan's eyes widened. "She's activated a great award. Impossible. She's untrained, unprepared, she shouldn't be able to channel that much power." "Lily, stay close to me," Jack whispered, hardly believing what he was seeing. The air around them shimmered like heat waves, and he could feel something pressing outward from his daughter. Protection magic, created by a 6-year-old who just wanted her daddy to be safe. Alarms continued blaring. Footsteps thundered through the corridors, lots of them. Palace security responding to the intrusion. Nathan and his conspirators realized they were running out of time. "Fall back," Nathan ordered. "We'll finish this later. But understand this, Ambassador, you forced our hand. This won't be the last attempt." They disappeared down the corridor just as High Chancellor Brennan arrived with 20 palace guards. The massive dragon took in the scene instantly, the scorch marks on the walls, the shimmering protective ward around Jack and Lily, the obvious signs of attack. "Are you hurt?" Brennan demanded. We're okay. Lily somehow, she protected us. Jack was still shaking. Elder Nathan. He led them. They were going to kill the children, all of them. They think we're a threat. Brennan's expression darkened with fury Jack had never seen before. Nathan and 6 others disappeared from their quarters tonight. We suspected treachery but didn't know their target. How many were here? 5 that I saw. Then 1 is still unaccounted for. Brennan activated his communication crystal. Security sweep, all human quarters. Code Black authorization. Nobody sleeps until every child is confirmed safe. The next few hours were chaos. Palace guards found the missing conspirator trying to break into the visitors' wing where Dr. Park's team and their children were staying. Another protective ward stopped him. Apparently one of the kids had drawn guardian angels on their bedroom walls before bed, which translated to some kind of defensive shield in first script. By morning, all 7 conspirators were in custody. No children had been hurt, though several families were understandably terrified. Jack found himself in an emergency session with both the Council of Elders and human leadership who'd connected via hologram from Earth and the colonies. This attack has forced a decision, High Chancellor Brennan announced to the assembled group. We can no longer pretend that everyone accepts the reality of human-dragon cooperation. There are dragons who fear what humans represent. And frankly, there will be humans who fear dragons for the same reasons. So what do we do? Asked President Carol West, appearing via hologram from Earth. Pull our people out? End the negotiations? No, said Elder Grace firmly. We double down. We prove the fearmongers wrong by building something that benefits both species so obviously that opposition becomes irrelevant. Elder Thomas stood up, looking older and more tired than Jack had seen him. I propose the founding of the Joint Academy. A place where human and dragon children learn together. Where humans are taught to consciously control their first script abilities, and dragons learn to approach the ancient language more intuitively. Where both species study the mystery of our shared origin. And where exactly would this academy be? General Price asked skeptically. Here, Brennan said. On Draconis Prime, in the palace grounds. Under the protection of the sovereignty and human security forces working together. We make it a symbol. Sacred ground where both species invest in a shared future. Jack thought about Lily, about the ward she'd created without training or understanding. About all the human children who could accidentally tap into power they didn't comprehend. We need this. Not just politically, but practically. Our kids need teachers who understand what they are doing. And your young dragons could benefit from human perspective on the ancient language. There's more to consider, Dr. Park added. If our theory is correct, if humans and dragons share a common ancestor from outside the galaxy, there might be other species out there with the same legacy. Other children of these makers. Finding them, understanding our shared history, could be the work of generations. But only if we work together. The debate continued for hours, but the momentum was building. The attack had paradoxically strengthened the argument for cooperation. Fear had driven Nathan and his followers to violence, but Lily's instinctive protection had shown what humans could do when threatened. Neither species could afford to make enemies of the other. 3 months later, Jack stood in the East Garden watching construction crews, both human and dragon, putting finishing touches on the new academy building. It was beautiful, a blend of dragon architectural style with human touches. Walls designed specifically for first script practice. Classrooms that could accommodate both species. Gardens where students could experiment safely with growth magic. Lily ran past him with a group of young dragon hatchlings and human children, all of them laughing. They'd become inseparable over the past weeks. The dragons taught human kids about dragon history and magic theory. The human children taught dragons games like tag and showed them how to see first script more playfully, less rigidly. Dad. Come see. Lily called out. She was standing by a massive wall that had been designated as the Academy's first official project. We're all making something together. Jack walked over and watched as 24 children, human and dragon, collaborated on an enormous mural. Dragons explained what certain symbols meant. Human kids instinctively drew them with perfect form. Together, they were creating something neither species could make alone. The mural showed 2 species, side by side, reaching toward stars. At the bottom, in perfect first script that Jack was slowly learning to read, was a phrase the children had chosen together. Different paths, same sky, one family. Elder Grace materialized beside him, her silver blue scales gleaming in the afternoon light. Your daughter changed history, Ambassador. She drew on palace walls and revealed a connection we'd forgotten for millions of years. She's just a kid who likes to draw, Jack said, though he was smiling. She had no idea what she was doing. Perhaps that's exactly why it worked. Sometimes the most profound discoveries come from those who don't know enough to think something is impossible. Grace watched the children working together. There will be more challenges. More people like Nathan who fear change. But look at them. The next generation doesn't see threats. They see friends. Jack thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the testing, the attack, the decision to build something new. His diplomatic mission had become something far bigger than trade negotiations. It had become the foundation for a true alliance between species, built on the innocent artwork of a child who just wanted to make pretty pictures. Ambassador Mitchell, High Chancellor Brennan's voice came through his communicator. You're needed for the dedication ceremony. The Academy officially opens in 1 hour. Jack looked at Lily one more time. She was holding hands with a young dragon hatchling named Riley, both of them giggling as they added finishing touches to their mural. His daughter, the 6-year-old who'd accidentally revealed humanity's greatest secret by drawing on palace walls. Come on, kiddo, he called out. Time to make history. Again. Lily looked back at him with that bright, innocent smile that had started everything. Okay, Daddy. Can we get ice cream after? Some things, Jack thought, never changed. And maybe that was exactly how it should be. The Academy opened that afternoon with representatives from both species in attendance. Children drew symbols of friendship and cooperation on the walls, each one a binding promise written in the language of the ancients. Dragons and humans working together, learning together, building a future neither could create alone. All because one little girl drew on palace walls, not knowing she was writing in the tongue of gods. Retry.